Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero, the Dew Sweeper. You're listening to the Tour Coach Podcast, giving you insights into golf instruction at the highest level, from on the PGA Tour to our Learning Center at Frederica Golf Club. All right, this edition here of the Tour Coach, I'm actually sitting with a glass of wine on the back porch of a house here on PGA, actually the Nicklaus course, talking here with Drew Steckel, one of the fixtures you see out here on the PGA Tour. Somebody recently named the best young instructors Golf Digest, but you could take away best young and just put one of the best. Drew, thanks for taking the time, and you've been busy. And then first of all, congratulations on all the recent success. Kokrak winning end of fall, I guess it was, in Vegas. And then Kevin Na just a week ago at Sony. You're on a hell of a run, bud.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I definitely have had a good couple months at the end of the year, and then started right back up with Kevin getting his fifth win. So back to the grind. Seasons, we didn't really get a break, but it never ends for us. No.
And I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've seen you out here a bunch. We've chit-chatted and stuff. I've come out to your place a couple times. You're always so great and nice to be around, and always enjoyable out here. And I mean, it's cool watching. I don't think people realize how much some of us, like, you see people all the time out here and you pull for them, because you know how hard it is working out here, and it's anytime somebody plays good, you know who the good guys are. They're always the ones that message, they're always the ones that text and say, hey, great job. Because it's not as easy and glamorous, I don't think, as everybody thinks, is teaching these guys out here.
No, not at all. People don't see the hours you're out there and what goes on, and the guy playing bad and the sessions on the range, and every week is always something. And people see it on TV and think it's just this touring, traveling, and get this no, you're standing outside all day and you're walking and you're watching and you might doing this, and you're not. It's not what everybody thinks. So there's a good group of guys out here. I think there's people that definitely have a lot of respect for each other, and everybody's got a different style of teaching, so it's cool to be around people and throw ideas. I started meeting a couple of your friends from Vegas, and they're great guys and great families and stuff, so it's always been cool. And I've always, I've heard things about people, and then when you finally meet them, it's cool to, meet through golf and definitely have friends out here, because it's a lonely road traveling all the time.
It really is, and I think that it's, it makes what we do, to me, it makes it, we're not all as close or whatever, but it makes it nice that, like, when you do go on the tee, you see some familiar faces and people because again, like you said, it's not like everybody thinks. And hell, tomorrow's Thursday, I'm going to fly straight from here to the East Coast to go to Frederica and teach for 2.5 days and fly back, or 3 days. And that's tiring. It isn't as fun as everybody thinks.
You're not going home and sitting by your pool with your feet up on vacation when you go home. You got to deal with the tour guys, and then you have people at home, and then you go home, and then you teach, and then you're, how it is. You can, every day, somebody's playing golf that you work with. Pretty much every day of the year, somebody's got a question or a, text or a swing video or this and that. You got all these things to manage, so it's hard with time management. Like, I've got to spend time with, your family or your, people my girlfriend. I got to be somewhat functional. I can't sit there all day and just be golf.
And it's hard. It's hard. We get sucked into it, and I try to do a better job with Yvonne, my wife, at home, and when I'm home, I try to be more engaged. But man, it's hard to stay. And I think that these phones that we're talking on and stuff, man, they make it harder because everybody has access to us 24/7.
24/7.
It's all the time.
Tuesday. Like, you know what it's like standing on the range on a Tuesday with 3 guys looking at for your time, and you got somebody texting you a swing from, like, back home, and you're like, wait a second, like, I got 3 or 4 or 5 whatever tour players. I've got somebody standing in front of me that's demanding my attention. I better give it to them at the moment. Like, I'm not 100%. I'm not, I've got to be here and present at all times. Anybody I'm teaching, or even when you go home, you're like, okay, well, maybe I should watch golf because my guy's leading the tournament or near the lead, but I got to teach these lessons for 5 hours. You know exactly how that is, because you've had to do it, watching this and going like, oh, how do I juggle this, and how do I deal with all of it?
Well, how did you get to where you are? I've seen you at Southern. I remember when you kind of were first at Southern Islands. I was out there with Shane Sigsby and some of those guys. And how did you get to where you are? What's your road to coaching tour players?
So my road started, I got into golf like middle, end of high school, and then I got into it and moved to Florida and started going to golf and then working with people when I was 19. Then I tried to play mini tours. I worked with this guy in Florida who was like, you need to play mini tours and get tournament experience, do this, this, and this. And I was doing that for like 2-3 years and getting lessons, struggling. And then I was about 23 years old. You know, I used to get lessons and do all this stuff, and then I'm like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do because I'm just not good enough. It's not going to happen. Like, there's no teacher who's going to get me to be beating Rory McIlroy. It's not going to happen. Yeah, I don't have the experience. I'm not as good. You know, nothing's just going to magically happen. So I kind of got down the road of learning. Like, I learned from, you know, Mike and all this stuff, and then I went to Mac O'Grady. So I got invited to go to a school. And then I went to my first Mac O'Grady school, the Morad school, and then it was like another level of like every secret society and this and that. You can't, like, you just can't talk to people. You can't around people, and Mac makes sure you don't know people. You can't mention their names. You can't do anything. So I did that for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years of going to schools and helping him with schools, kind of somewhat with the intent of playing, but not really in my heart.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. And then I just learned a ton. I just kind of like would pick people's brain. I became friends with Grant Waite and Dana Dahlquist, and I would ask them questions. And then my first tour guy that I started with was Mike Bender. He worked for Mike Bender. He was a teacher. He quit playing. He played at Clemson with Jonathan Bird and Lucas and those guys. His name was Elliot Gailey. And I lived with him in Florida during the time I was in Florida in Lake Mary. And then he started back up on the Corn Ferry, like at 34 years old. And he goes, hey, I know you're working with Mac and this and that. Do you mind taking a look at my swing and helping me out in the game on the Corn Ferry or at the web.com time? So started with him, spent a lot of time at the Corn Ferry, and I kind of just really enjoyed it. I was 23 or 4 years old and out on the Corn Ferry teaching these guys. And you don't really know what it's like until you go through it. You know, I don't really know how to describe teaching tour players to people because it's so different with each one. So yeah, started with him, and then Jason Gore was working with Mac O'Grady, and then Jason was working with him, and I sent him a message and was like, hey, man, you want some balls or whatever? You know, kind of pick my brain, you pick your brain, whatever. And then he was still in the Corn Ferry at the time and got his card back. I started with him, and then I picked up Danny, and I met Lee, and then Perez, and then from there, I was basically out on the PGA Tour in like 2012 or 13, I think that was.
You've been out here a good while.
Yeah, and I was young, and it was kind of like, who's this young kid? How does he know what he's doing? You never, you don't, people ask like, you've never hit a shot on the PGA Tour. You're not, this and that. That's not what they care about. You don't need to be a good player to be a great coach. And it's hard to tell that to people when you're young and 26 years old. Like, how do you teach a guy that's 40? Well, I learned a lot about the golf swing, and I think I've got valuable information that I think is going to help them. And I guess I can do it. I don't know. You don't really know until you do it. And it just kind of went from there. And then ever since then, I've evolved. Probably my teaching's changed, or not really changed, but I've learned how to coach better. I learned communication skills better. You always keep learning, and you just keep going with it. You learn from everybody. Everybody I talk to in golf, I can learn something from, is kind of the mentality I have. So I don't really have an opinion of what this and this. I don't care what you teach and how you teach and whatever it is. I think it's cool to learn how everybody does it.
I agree with that. I was talking to a teacher not long ago, and, somebody said, well, like, oh, I don't think that guy's any good, right? You hear that all the time. And I said, like what that guy does may not be my cup of tea, but he's obviously good because he's had success. And I watch some of these people argue and fight with each other and have these pissing contests on social media about what's right and wrong. And I'm always like, who really cares if the guys, like if I'm just telling a guy to stand on his head. Yeah. But my guy wins the tour event 3 weeks in a row. You know what? Then telling him to stand on his head was the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have guys, and you've been through a guy like Zach Suker, who, you've got to take this guy from like probably at his lowest point of confidence as a professional or something. And now he's, contended in Hartford last year, you know what it's like working with these players going, okay, well, they've maybe been at, here and here and here, but how you teach them and what your conversation is with them, it doesn't matter if it's scientific, if you're right, if he's right, if this guy's smarter or this guy. It's not about who's got the most information and who's the smartest, because they don't care at all.
Don't you think, too, I've said this, like, I think most of us have most of the same information. And I know we may have a little bit different beliefs and different preferences, and we may word it different.
Yep.
But, like, I think to me, I think the art of teaching is knowing when to tell the person the thing. Like, we all kind of know. You and I could sit and look at some guy that doesn't work with me or you on the range, and we would probably come to some agreement like, hey, down the road, this is what we do. But, like, the art of teaching is knowing when you tell the guy that.
Exactly.
Or the girl.
Yeah, and you have that moment where you're going, okay, it's Thursday morning and they're warming up, and you may have to come up with something at that moment, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Something in a practice round on a Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, off-season. You may have to say it, and how you say it. It doesn't matter how you say it as long as you get the communication to them and they go, okay, I got this. Your guys, you have some of the great ball strikers out there, and you're like, okay, well, all right, Lucas, this might work for you, and this is how, like, the conversation's going to be different with every single guy you work with, and when and how much you talk to them is very important to each guy. Some guy may want to talk to you out on the range, and the next guy may be like, shut up, please don't talk to me right now.
Absolutely. And, I think, I always go back. My mentor was, he's an older teacher. He's Hank Johnson, longtime Golf Digest top teacher, taught in the Golf Digest schools. And I remember one time he told me, like, he said, we're watching a guy, and he goes, this is the part of the lesson we have to learn to shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you say, the less you say, the better it is, because I know you can sit out there and you could be watching on a Thursday and Friday or whatever. If you're watching them play a tournament, and you can have the answer in 2 seconds, but if they don't know the answer and how to fix it, that's the problem. I don't want them calling me every day with a new thought. All right, I need you to tell me what to do every day and stand behind me on every tee shot I hit, because if I don't have you there, we got a problem. You got to give them some ownership up, and you got to they're the most talented guys in the world at playing golf, and they're clearly talented. You're not going to reinvent how they hit a golf ball. You're going to help them perform better, and you're going to help them enhance their skills. But you got to let them know what to do on a Sunday with a 2-shot lead on the 18th hole. Right.
And then we had an interesting story, and I like having my guys play together.
Yeah.
And I like getting the perspective from player. Like yesterday, in fact, we were on 18 at PGA West, and Bill Haas, Lucas were playing together, and Bill said, this is the tee shot I hate, trouble on the left, and that's when I hit the right shot. And Lucas jumps in and says, well, this is when I put the ball back and I try to stay in my posture longer, because I know it's going to start to the right and then it's going to draw as long as I keep going through it. I mean, I love listening to players. Like, that's way better than me telling a guy something, and I think that's what's cool. Like, I watch you with your guys. I mean, I think I don't know that, people understand that enough, that, like, we all work together, and sometimes the answers to help our guys come from another guy.
Yeah, and I had Kevin Na sit there, and I'll be like, hey, Kevin, look at Kokrak's putting. Tell him what to do. Tell him this. Hey, Kevin, look at Chesson Hadley's chipping, or look at Pat. Hey, Pat, help him with this. I'll take my guys, and you know this well, like, if a guy's a great driver of the ball, or a guy's a great iron player, a great short game, or any of that, you can have them enhance the guys that you're around and help. And obviously they listen, because they're like, okay, well, I respect them, and I know they're really good at that skill. So it's really cool to get guys to kind of have a team environment in a world of golf that's very about themselves. How it's sure, it's like everybody's in their own bubble, and it's like, I'm in my world, and this is my team, and this is it. But if you get players kind of having a team environment, it's fun to do.
Absolutely. I think to me, it makes it more enjoyable. Like this week, we've rented a house, me and Lucas, we're staying together, and I like that atmosphere. I like when they play together and they do that stuff. I like when they look after each other, and I like the veterans to look after the younger guys that have been out there, and I think that's a cool part that people don't see of what we do.
Yeah, you got some guy out of college, like a Robbie Shelton or whatever. You got a young guy, and you go, hey, this guy's won a U.S. Lucas has done this, and this, and you have a Bill Haas who's FedEx Cups and won, a ton of tournaments. When those guys get around them, they should absorb every piece of information, how to do it, and what, of all their past experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your teaching. This is, one of the cool things I like doing this is I learn a bunch from talking to the great teachers. So if I wasn't 49 and fat and had some flexibility left in my body, and I showed up and I was going, and I'm trying to play professional, and I showed up there at Southern Highlands with you, like where do you start with Lair? Like, where's the first thing you start? What do you look for, and where do you go?
So my first thing with somebody, I will ask them before they even hit a shot. I'm going to ask them their opinion of themselves. So I want to know what their brain really thinks about their golf game. So I'm going to ask whether it's a tour player, whatever it is. Say it's a guy I've never really seen play. I can look him up on stats. I can do this or whatever. I'm going to get an opinion of himself or herself or whatever and say, well, so you tell me about your golf. I want to hear what you think and what you think you do well, what you don't do well, why you're good, why you're not good, why you're playing well now, or whatever it may be. Just give me your take, right? I want to hear it. And I'm going to watch you hit some balls, and I want to see what I think on my opinion. If you watch, if you say you're the best driver of the golf ball and, one out of every 3 balls is in the woods or whatever, anything, or you chunk it every 5 times with a wedge, or you can't tip, you can't putt, or whatever it is, I'm going to have an unbiased opinion of it and an unemotional opinion. So I want to hear your emotional kind of attachment to your golf game, right? Because everybody has, I find that everybody has an opinion of themselves as a golfer, this is who I am in the golf world. I'm known for this, or I'm known for the driver ball. I'm known for being an iron player.
Yeah.
So I'll start out with that, and then I'm going to kind of get and say, okay, if it's a PGA Tour guy, I'm going to say, let's go through your stats. You tell me you're the best iron player on tour and ranked 175 and approach to the green. Right? So let's go through that, and we have a database to go through, and we can sit there and go through that. Okay, so let's be realistic with where we are with that. Well, I'm not a good putter. Okay, well, you're 40th putting. Okay, well, I'm not, I'm going to go through that. Then I'm going to go through their swing and say, okay, well, all right, I believe you got different swings produce different strengths in games. So I'm going to kind of go through that and say, okay, all right, well, if we're maximum out and we're maximum up to the right and all that, you probably are going to drive it pretty well, right? That's what kind of goes good hand in hand with the driver. Okay, well, that might not work with a wedge. Okay, so how do we find middle ground with mid irons, long irons, short irons, wedges, chipping, putting, and make a complete player? Whether it's LPGA like an Anna Northwich. Okay, well, Anna, you never miss a fairway. You average 85% of your fairways, or 80%, whatever. You beat greens and regulations fairways. So obviously a lot of greens and a lot of fairways. How do we go through your game and enhance the strengths and weaknesses that you think you have based on the reality of the stats? Okay, now we're going to go through that. We're going to find pieces of your swing that you may look, and then I'll say this. The first thing I like to do, guys, is say, okay, well, when you look at your golf swing, when you look at it, because, if you are a tour player, most of them bail and they take a video and they think, I don't like this. Okay, all right, well, what don't you like about your swing? Okay, why? Okay, let's go through that. You don't like it because of that. Okay, so let's go through why you don't like it. Okay, now let's go through the good things and the bad things that you don't like, and let's get a, some different opinion of how you think about it versus how I think about it. Because I like this and you might not like that. And then I'm going to nitpick and break it down in a way of saying, okay, well, you need to learn to like yourself as a golfer, okay? Because you're going to walk off the golf course 95% of the time and you're not going to be happy. You're going to feel like I left 4 shots or 2 shots or I missed this putt or I hit this drive, right? So I'm going to go through and try to make them not have to have a cheerleader all the time and be their own cheerleader. It's hard enough to play golf on any level now, and I'm going to go through and say, okay, we've got to learn to have not fun, but you can have fun, but you also need to learn to appreciate the good things you do and walk through objectively with how you played golf that day. Yeah. What you did to score, right? But we're not going to, some guys, you know this as well as, I'm curious to ask you this question is, you've got your guys that are super technical, that want a bunch of swing stuff, and they want to talk scientific stuff and all these different deals, and they want to know all these things, right? So for you, that's the great question that I would love to ask you right now is say, how do you weed out their thoughts and their opinions?
Well, it's, first, I think that the reason there's a bunch of us out here that are really good because there's a bunch of different personalities, right? And there's a bunch of different ways of thinking. And I think that players tend to gravitate towards teachers that will give them what they want. And like I always use and I'm using them because he's great and neither of us teach him, but Bryson DeChambeau would never come to me because I'm too simple, right? It doesn't mean I'm wrong, and it doesn't mean he's wrong, right? But so most of my guys are not very technical and like it boiled down to simple things. But that being said, I've been helping my good friend Brady Riggs with Brandon Hagee because Brady's over in Hawaii doing a project. And,
okay. Yep.
And so Brandon's super technical, right?
Yep.
And so, that's where I have to, I think the important thing for a teacher is to listen, because I think I watch a bunch of teachers and they're always ready to start talking before they get done hearing what the player has to say. And then you listen. And just because they said a whole bunch of technical stuff doesn't mean you have to answer with a bunch of it. And, so this is a good example from today, and I think you'll enjoy this. Is so, I watched him play 9 holes yesterday, and I watched him play 5 or 6 on Monday. And at the end, I just said, he had a bunch of questions and he's very technically oriented. And I said, hey, I think the main focus, and I texted this to him and Brady, and then we did on the ranges, everything comes down to, I wish you would try to stay in your posture longer through the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had him do some shots at a slower speed where he could feel it. And,
right.
But I think, and I don't know if that answers your question, but I think, again, it kind of goes back to our job is to listen to them first. Because a lot of times they answer their own questions a lot of the time.
A lot of the time they do. They know what they feel, and they're very good at their feels, right? I can't feel what they feel, and they don't feel what I feel. So, if me and you are hitting balls on the range, we don't know. I know what I'm feeling, but I'm not as good as them. So, we're not in that level. So it's like, okay, well, when they're really, really good at, like, club face awareness or whatever it may be. Yeah. And you don't sit there and, like, a guy like Brandon Hagee who swings it really, really fast and has a ton of speed, for him, like, feeling like he may swing at 60% or 50% is probably something where he can gather all his information and his brain is like, okay, well, now I can sequence it up a little better, whatever it may be. Yeah. And that's where people are like, oh, well, it's not technical. They think there's some random technical science project with it. And it's like, no. You don't need that. You can learn all that, and that's good for teachers to know, and you can sit around and you can discuss all you want and argue about it, but it doesn't make these guys better. They don't care.
I always refer to what we do as guided discovery with tour players. I'm not talking about when we give a lesson to somebody that's a 15 handicap that comes to see us. But with them, I feel like it's guided discovery. I think most of them have a real good idea, and there'd be teachers that would argue with me and you about it. But, I think they have a real good idea what they do when they play well. And we help them, I think, organize their thoughts and maybe help make the variables line up and share our thoughts and ways to do it. And I've just always found, Drew, that if you slow them down a little bit, and sometimes, sometimes you're on a range and they get hitting faster and faster and faster, and it's like something different.
It's a different environment. You get around a bunch of guys that you're competing against, you don't feel the same at home. It's a whole deal.
That's when I've always found it's good to step in and tell some story about something. Right.
You don't talk golf. A lot of the times during warm-ups, people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, literally talking nothing about golf.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a Sunday and you got a guy near the lead and you're there, you're not even talking about golf. You're giving them a few things. Like, you've been there a lot of times doing that. And, I'm not giving them a lesson. We're not giving lessons on Wednesday nights. If you are, that's not a good sign. If you're redoing something and giving them some one-sided speech towards okay, well, we need to diagnose this and do all this. That doesn't work.
Yeah, and there's, sometimes I've been on the tee where a player hits a bad tee ball on the range and they're like, what is this? And I've said, I don't know, I wasn't watching, even though I was. And they get more pissed that I wasn't watching, but I was. But it's like, it's an outlier, right? It's like you hit one bad tee ball. It's Tuesday. What the hell does it matter, right?
We're not going to reinvent your golf swing and change everything because you hit one bad drive or you hit one ball on the 18th hole with water left in the water. There's not. You got to learn to be like, okay, if I always want to be the guy that's always perfect, you coach people to be perfect, they're going to have problems in golf.
No question, because it's so imperfect, right? And I think one of the things I try to encourage my players, and especially the young players coming up, is that you don't have to swing it perfect. You don't have to hit it perfect to win a golf tournament. And you look, heck, it was a great example. Heck, your player, Kevin, not last week. He makes par off a cart path, right? Making a 15-footer.
he pull hooked it into the range off the net, hits a 5-wood, lays it up in the bunker, gets up and down, makes a 15.
Yeah, I mean, that's golf, right?
And people are like, well, what's the difference with Kevin winning and this and this? I said, okay, well, he used to have a couple tee shots that really cost him when he was near the lead with 9 holes or whatever it would be. I said, he's got a great short game and he's a great putter. I gave him the tool to not panic when the wheels start spinning. You know, everybody's wheels are going to spin at some point in a 4-day tournament. Right. Whatever it may be. They're going to have a panic moment. So,
agree.
As a coach, you're trying to calm down and be like, okay, there's an answer to this. We can figure this out. You can figure this out. There is no need to blow up the whole entire game that you have and reinvent everything and abandon the ship.
Yeah, I love it. I agree. And I preach to my guys like all the time. I mean, when we start and we sit down, it's like we got a big picture plan and we know these are the things. I always try to tell my players, like, I want you to understand what you do when you hit your good shots. I don't really give a shit what you do when you hit your bad. We don't want to hit them again.
Right.
If you know what you need to do to hit your good ones, that's what you should be doing. Keep trying to do that.
Exactly. Well, it's like, I'll use Lucas as an example because, like, look at what he did. I think it was the year before last, before the shutdown or whatever. Like, how many top 10s did Lucas have? Like, he was on a roll of, like...
Bunch, right?
I mean, it was like this guy, and I've been around Lucas in practice rounds, seen him on the range, and I'm like, wow. You know, this guy, he's so impressive to watch at a golf. You watch him and you're like, how do you ever play bad? You know, how is it possible? You know, I know you're not, Kevin Na as a putter. You know, that I get that, but it's like, dude, you hit it phenomenal. And I've never really seen him ever sit there. I'm like, wow, this guy, day in and day out, this guy's a ball striker.
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably going, all right, well, okay, how do you work on this and this and this and this? Because his standards are different than Kevin Na's standards for ball striking. Lucas is going to hit a fairway and be like, no, that's not good because it's 5 yards right of where I'm aiming. Kevin's like, I just hit the fairway.
That's interesting. That's a good point. And don't you think it's funny, too, like the different shapes that they hit? Like you'll have a guy that hits it 20 yards right, but if he's a cutter and it doesn't go left, they're totally okay with it. Then you get a guy that hits it 20 yards right and it didn't have any look like it wanted to draw back. The balls go in the exact same damn spot, and one's pissed and one's happy and thinks it's closer to a good swing.
Well, that's exactly how Pat Perez is. Pat hates missing it right. He wants to hit a draw, and he wants to see it curve right to left. So anytime he hits it right to left, he's like, okay, good, done. But if he hits it like right and a little, he loses. He doesn't like that shot. And it's just funny the standards of guys, a guy that's a great driver, a great iron player, the standards on ball strike at that level, people wouldn't realize, like, they're hitting 4-iron, 220, going, it's 10 feet right of the flag. I don't like that shot. Like, I missed it. Whatever. You got guys out there that sometimes people wouldn't believe how picky they can be.
Oh, yeah. Oh, trust me. Yeah.
Going, what? I'm in it bad. What do you mean? You're chipping onto a par 5 and 2 with an easy chip. I mean, most people are happy with that.
All right, so my last question for you. What do you think for you is the biggest, is if a young teacher was coming to you, younger than you're young, teacher starting out, what would you give them? What would you say, like, hey, these are the things that you need to do to really be successful out here?
I think that the thing that a lot of people have kind of missed the boat on, or not to say they missed the boat, is you got to have an open mind, and you've got to sit there and you've got to learn from everybody. You've got to talk with an open mind and not be having an ego of saying, I'm smarter, I'm better, it doesn't matter. If you learn from everybody and learn how to communicate, like, you want to learn from teachers. You can go talk to any teacher and just pick their brain and then learn from everybody you can, because everybody out here is brilliant in their own way, and learn how to communicate, learn how to talk to people, learn how to, not to sit there and say you have to be a therapist and this and that, but if you learn how these guys think and learn how people think in the world of their golf world that they create, if their whole life is golf, you don't know how to communicate with them, you're not going to get through to them no matter what you teach them. You could be the smartest teacher. You could be all this information, put them on 3D, do all this stuff. It doesn't make a difference if you cannot get them to understand it. So I would say learning how to teach and communicate is more important and having great people skills than it is as far as, like, okay, I understand all these technical things. The technical stuff, we all are around each other. It's like, okay, it's conversation with all of us, and okay, we got it. Okay, pretty basic. We can do this, right? We don't need to use a fancy word or fancy term. You sit there and use words. Doesn't matter. But learning to communicate is with the player genuinely appreciate and make it practical to play with.
I love it. I mean, I agree 100%. And I think, not to get off on a tangent, but I mean, I think it's like we see this in the whole world. Everybody's so on one side instead of realizing if you just listen and talk to people, sometimes you have more in common, you know. And, you know, you may teach Jason Kokrak way different than I would, but like if we sit and talk about it, I could find out like, oh man, that's interesting. Yeah, I can kind of see where you're going with that, you know. And same deal with you with the guys I teach, and that's to me what's cool about being out here is folks like you, and you get to know them and you get to watch. And I mean, I think it's awesome. And I just want to say first, congratulations on all your success, because I know how hard you work. And man, and I'm pumped. I'm looking forward to watching you more, and hopefully when COVID kind of relaxes out here and we get to go where we can start having beers and drinks again out in public.
Exactly.
I mean, it's going to be good. Yeah. I owe you at least a beer for doing this.
Well,
and,
I know your friends drink nice wine.
You do. Let me tell you,
I know
James Higsby's never drank anything as low end as I'm probably drinking right now.
Yeah. Oh, if we're around them anytime, that's a nice person to have as your wine picker for the night.
You're right. Well, hey, keep up all the great stuff, man. I'm so happy for all the stuff you're doing. And also, I tell you that, like, I'm a big fan of yours. I follow you on social media. I love seeing the stuff you do. I think it's cool. I think it's great for the game.
Well, thank you. Right back at you.
Appreciate you coming on.
Supportive. I mean, I've always heard positive things about, you know, I'm like, this guy's great. He's you know, sitting there talking. This is awesome. And I've always, you know, like getting back into the golf. I'm obviously a lot newer to the golf world than you, so I'm like, this is cool. You know, I get to be around people they've done it for 20 years. You know, this is cool. I respect everybody that's done it, and no matter if you're teaching at your, you know, the club guy at his course, it's like I respect those as much as the guy that's teaching tour winners. It's like everybody out there is doing their part in golf, and it's for the greater good of people playing more golf.
You're right. You're exactly right. And we're all in it there. And Drew, appreciate you sitting in. Hope you had a good beer during this. And I'll look forward to one. I know I'm going to see you out there on the road in the next week or so. But look forward to us sitting down and having a beer. And I appreciate it. And keep up the good work, buddy.
You got it. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Tour Coach with Tony Ruggiero. If you enjoyed this, make sure to hit subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening to this podcast. You can stay up to date because we have weekly episodes coming your way with fascinating people in the world of golf instruction at the highest level. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. If you want to learn more about Tony, head over to dosweepersgolf.com to get all the details on what he's up to. Maybe you want to see him, grab a lesson, or go to one of his camps, pick up his book, Lessons from the Legends. You can do that there. If you want to see Tony in action with some videos and other content, head over to golfsciencelab.com/Tony to get more info there. This episode was powered by the Golf Science Lab and was edited, mixed, and produced by Just Hit Publish Productions.
We go into year 2 of the Tour Coach. It wouldn't be possible without the support of all our sponsors. And I've had some great ones. And one of the things that I'm most proud of in my career and in my business is the fact that all of my relationships here and all these sponsorships have been long withstanding relationships, haven't jumped from sponsor to sponsor and manufacturer to manufacturer. And I've always prided ourselves in special relationships and when people work together, support each other, and we've all put out great products for the benefits of everybody else. So I want to give a special thanks to these folks that have been with me for such a long time, and that would be the folks at Srixon, Cleveland Golf, and Zexio. Couldn't ask for a better manufacturer to be aligned with, and not only do they put out great product and great support, but they're first-class people, and they believe in what we're doing here on the Tour Coach and with the Dew Sweepers, and also Vineyard Vines. Ian, Shep, TJ, and all the folks at Vineyard Vines. Hard to keep me looking good, but they do a fantastic job, and they're like family. They support everything on the Dew Sweepers, and we're so proud to be affiliated with and support the folks at Vineyard Vines. So if you're out there, you're listening to the Tour Coach, please support our sponsors, Srixon, Cleveland Golf, Zexio, as well as Vineyard Vines, and keep listening and keep enjoying hanging out with us here on the Tour Coach.